Something unthinkable has just unfolded. Iran has reportedly unleashed a full barrage, 16 Russian-built RSM-56 Bulava submarine-launched ballistic missiles fired from a nuclear-powered Borei-class submarine now operating under what appears to be direct Iranian control in the northern Indian Ocean. And in response, Tel Aviv has been handed a chilling ultimatum: 24 hours to evacuate its most critical military and strategic installations. Pause for a second and really feel that. Tonight in Tel Aviv, this isn't about policy debates or geopolitical theory. This is about real people making impossible decisions. Parents are standing in doorways, wondering if they should wake their children and run. Families are staring at packed bags that may decide their fate. Elderly relatives, neighbors who can't move fast, loved ones who may be left behind. It's all crashing in at once, and above everything else, one terrifying question lingers. Will the sirens start screaming before sunrise? Stay with me, because what we're about to uncover doesn't feel like a distant what-if anymore. It feels like a playbook already written, not a theory, not speculation, a scenario that defense strategists across continents have already simulated behind closed doors, and one that, in their most unguarded moments, they admit could actually happen. This isn't a missile launch from a fixed, visible silo that satellites can monitor every second of the day. This is something far more dangerous. The threat is moving silently beneath the ocean's surface, hidden, unpredictable, and nearly impossible to trace. The Borei-class submarine, known in Russia as Project 955, wasn't built for show. It was engineered to disappear, to sink into the deep acoustic shadows of the ocean where sonar struggles to function, to glide through shifting layers of temperature and salinity that distort detection systems, to exist in total silence until the exact moment it decides to strike. And the weapons it carries? Each Bulava missile is a nightmare in motion. Solid fuel, long range, capable of crossing continents. Each one can deploy multiple nuclear-capable warheads, equipped with advanced decoys and evasive maneuvers specifically designed to break through even the most advanced missile defense systems fielded by the United States and Israel. Right now, the clock is not just ticking, it's racing. Tel Aviv has been given a narrow, suffocating window. 24 hours to prepare for what could be a direct strike on its most vital military and strategic nerve centers. This isn't just pressure. This is the kind of existential threat Israel has rarely faced in modern history, not since the shock and chaos of the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And here's the twist. This isn't happening, at least not in the headlines you're reading today. But it's real enough that top military planners in both Washington and Tel Aviv are already asking the same unsettling question. What happens when deterrence stops working? What happens when your enemy can hold your capital hostage from a platform you can't see, can't track, and can't reliably destroy? Tonight, we're going to break this all the way down. Not just how something like this could unfold, but what it actually means for the balance of power across the Middle East and far beyond. And more importantly, why it has senior defense officials in both Tel Aviv and Washington operating on edge. There are 4 critical questions driving this entire crisis. 4 questions that, right now, are keeping decision makers awake at night. First, how did Iran suddenly gain the capability to activate and launch Bulava missiles from a Russian Borei-class nuclear submarine? Second, what makes this underwater predator and its payload of 16 missiles so dangerously close to unstoppable? Third, why is the United States showing signs of strategic panic, and where are the cracks beginning to show in its response? And fourth, what does this 24-hour evacuation warning really signal, not just for Israel, but for the Middle East and for a global order that may already be starting to fracture? These aren't questions for entertainment, they're warnings. Because if a scenario like this ever moves from simulation to reality, every second will matter, and the difference between understanding it now versus later could come down to survival. So if you're looking for a clear, unfiltered breakdown of one of the most dangerous strategic developments of our time, stay with me. Because the real story starts here. How did Iran get its hands on the ability to launch Bulava missiles from a Russian nuclear submarine? The truth is, it's not as complicated as you might think. but it is very, very intentional. This didn't happen overnight, and it definitely wasn't luck. What you're looking at is the result of something far more dangerous. Years of quiet coordination built layer by layer, while most Western analysts brushed it off as temporary, transactional, nothing to worry about. It started with a deal that, on the surface, looked almost routine. Russia was bleeding resources in Ukraine, precision-guided weapons, artillery shells, burning through them faster than its defense industry could replace them. Moscow needed something cheap, something effective, something it could deploy in massive numbers without hesitation. Iran had exactly that. The Shahed drone series, especially the Shahed 136, not sophisticated, not elegant, but brutally effective when unleashed in swarms. Iran didn't just supply them by the hundreds, it handed over the blueprint, allowing Russia to manufacture them on its own soil. But this wasn't just a weapons exchange, because what Russia gave in return was far more valuable than cash or crude oil. It gave access. Access to advanced military technology, access to systems Iran had never been able to touch before, and more importantly, hands-on training from one of the world's most experienced nuclear powers. That's where everything changed. What began in the skies slowly descended into the depths of the ocean. Both nations started to realize something critical. Their long-term interests weren't just aligned, they were converging against a shared rival, the United States and its global alliance network. By 2025 and 2026, their cooperation had escalated into something much bigger. Joint naval drills, large-scale operations across the Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Oman. Publicly, they called it the Maritime Security Belt. But behind the scenes, something far more consequential was unfolding. Russian commanders, under increasing pressure from Moscow to deepen the alliance, began allowing Iranian naval crews to step aboard their most advanced submarines, including the Borei-class. At first, it looked harmless. Basic orientation, learning the layout, emergency protocols, navigation fundamentals. But that didn't last. Step by step, the training intensified. Iranian crews moved from observation to operation. They learned how to interpret sonar data, how to navigate silently beneath the surface, how to manage critical onboard systems. Under strict supervision, they were exposed to reactor controls, auxiliary systems, and eventually, the most sensitive procedures of all, missile launch operations, not theory, not simulations, real procedures. By late 2025, something shifted again, but this time, it wasn't public. A quiet agreement was signed between the two nations. Officially, it was labeled a strategic partnership document. Unofficially, it was something much more powerful, a joint operational control arrangement. And here's what that actually means. On paper, the submarine is still Russian. It flies the Russian naval flag. Russian officers remain on board, holding final technical authority over any nuclear launch. But in reality, Iran now has fully trained crews capable of running the vessel, navigating it, positioning it, preparing its weapons. And in a declared crisis, they can issue the tactical launch command themselves once political approval comes from Tehran. Let that sink in. Iran doesn't own the submarine, but it can use it. When the moment comes, it doesn't have to wait, negotiate, or plead with Moscow. The capability is already in its hands. So why would Russia ever agree to something this extreme? Because for both nations, the calculation is the same. The United States is the common adversary. And the current global system, dominated by American military reach and economic pressure, is something they both want to disrupt. Russia brings the technology, the expertise, the strategic platforms. Iran brings geography, proximity, infrastructure, and perhaps most importantly, the willingness to take risks in a region where Russia prefers not to deploy large forces directly. It's a perfect division of roles. And the timing? Almost surgical. Israel is already stretched thin, juggling multiple fronts from Hezbollah in the north to Iranian-backed militias in Syria to constant pressure from Gaza and the West Bank. The United States is distracted, pulled in multiple directions at once. Ukraine, Taiwan, domestic political fractures, and a growing fatigue among the American public when it comes to another Middle Eastern conflict. Iran and Russia saw that gap, and they moved. For months, they accelerated training, integration, coordination. Meanwhile, American and Israeli intelligence were watching, but they misread what they were seeing. They saw drills, exercises, symbolic gestures. They didn't see transformation. They didn't realize how quickly training had turned into operational capability. And by the time that realization hit, it was already too late. Because this transition didn't take years, it didn't even take long months. It happened in a compressed window, 6 to 8 months, faster than most intelligence models ever predicted. And now, we're staring at a scenario that used to belong only in classified simulations, or the pages of a political thriller, except this time, it feels a little too real. Which brings us to the next layer of this crisis, the weapon itself. Because the platform Iran is now operating under this arrangement, the Russian Borei-class submarine, specifically the Borei-A variant, is not just advanced. It's built for moments like this. Roughly 170 meters long, over 24,000 tons submerged, powered by a nuclear reactor that allows it to stay underwater for months without resurfacing. But size isn't what makes it dangerous. Silence is. This submarine was engineered to disappear. Its pump jet propulsion system drastically reduces noise, making it far quieter than older Russian designs like the Delta or Akula classes. In certain ocean conditions, it can rival, even match, the stealth of America's Virginia-class submarines, which means this: it can move undetected. It can position itself anywhere across the vast northern Indian Ocean or Arabian Sea. And satellites? They see nothing, because the ocean doesn't give up its secrets easily. A quiet submarine in deep water isn't just hard to find. It's almost impossible. But even that isn't the real threat. The real danger is what it carries: the RSM-56 Bulava missile. Each Borei-class submarine holds up to 16 of them. And in this scenario, that's exactly what was launched. A full salvo, 16 missiles fired in rapid succession, not to hit one target, but to overwhelm everything. The Bulava is built for speed and surprise. A 3-stage solid-fuel missile that can be launched within seconds. No lengthy preparation, no vulnerable fueling phase. Once the order is given, it's already too late. Its range stretches between 8,000 and 10,000 kilometers, more than enough to strike Israel from deep within the Indian Ocean, far beyond the reach of most anti-submarine patrols. And each missile, it doesn't carry just one warhead. It can deploy up to 10 independently targetable re-entry vehicles, what strategists call MIRVs, each one capable of delivering nuclear or high-explosive payloads. And that's not all. These missiles are equipped with decoys designed to mimic real warheads, electronic countermeasures to jam radar systems, and maneuverable re-entry vehicles that can alter their path mid-flight. Some variants may even carry hypersonic glide vehicles, traveling at speeds above Mach 20, moving unpredictably, making interception nearly impossible with current technology. To understand the scale of this threat, compare it to America's Trident II D5 missiles aboard Ohio-class submarines. Reliable, accurate, battle-tested, but designed decades ago. The Bulava, despite its rocky development, was built for modern warfare, for a world filled with advanced missile defenses like Aegis Ashore, THAAD, and Israel's Arrow systems. It was designed to break through them, and that's where the real pressure builds. Israel's defense network is one of the most advanced on the planet. Arrow 3 for space-based interception, backed by Arrow 2, David's Sling, THAAD, and Patriot systems. Layer upon layer of protection. But there's a problem. All of it relies on time. Time to detect, time to track, time to respond. And when a missile is launched from a hidden submarine, that time disappears. Warning windows shrink to just 8 to 12 minutes, from launch to impact. That's it. In that narrow window, the system has to detect the launch, calculate the trajectory, activate radar networks, assign interceptors, fire them, and guide them toward targets that are actively trying to deceive them, all while the clock keeps ticking. 8 to 12 minutes. That's not strategy. That's survival. There is no margin for hesitation and no second attempt. In short, this represents a generational leap for Iran. Just a few years ago, Iran's most advanced missiles were medium-range systems like the Shahab-3 and the more recent Khorramshahr, limited in range, payload, and penetration capability. They were dangerous but manageable within the design parameters of Israeli and American defenses. Today, through this cooperation with Russia, Iran has effectively entered the domain of strategic nuclear delivery from a stealthy, mobile, and nearly undetectable platform. And that changes the equation entirely. That is why defense planners and Washington and Tel Aviv are so alarmed? Not because they think an attack is imminent tonight, but because the rules of the game have changed permanently. A weapon system that was once reserved for great power conflict between the United States, Russia, and China is now potentially available for use in a regional crisis between Iran and Israel. This underwater monster does not just threaten one city or one military base. It threatens to rewrite the entire balance of deterrence in the Middle East to make the kind of brinkmanship that Iran has practiced for years exponentially more dangerous. As soon as the news of this activation broke, the United States reacted quickly, but even its rapid response is showing serious limits. Within minutes of Iran's announcement, the White House Situation Room was fully activated. The president was briefed immediately. The National Security Council was called into emergency session. U.S. Strategic Command raised the global alert level to DEFCON 3, one step away from peacetime maximum, a level not seen publicly since the Cuban Missile Crisis. On the military side, orders went out fast. Two major carrier strike groups, the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea and the USS Gerald R. Ford in the Mediterranean, were put on maximum alert and began moving closer to the region. Squadrons of F-35 fighter jets and F-15E Strike Eagles were scrambled from bases in Qatar, the UAE, and Bahrain. Most importantly, the U.S. Navy launched multiple P-8 Poseidon aircraft, America's most advanced anti-submarine warfare planes, to begin hunting for the Borei submarine in the Indian Ocean and Arabian Sea, dropping sonobo and using magnetic anomaly detectors to search for the faint whisper of its passage. THAAD and Patriot missile defense batteries in the region were also placed on the highest state of readiness, with crews sleeping next to their launchers. On paper, this looks like a strong and decisive response, the kind of muscular American reaction that has deterred adversaries for decades. But behind the scenes, senior American officials are already facing a hard truth. They are struggling to find good options that do not risk a wider war with Russia or fail catastrophically. The biggest problem is simple, but very serious. Finding and tracking a nuclear-powered submarine like the Borei in the vast ocean is extremely difficult, even for the United States Navy, which has spent billions of dollars on anti-submarine warfare. Even with all of America's advanced sonar arrays, surveillance satellites that can spot a submarine periscope from space, and P-8 patrol planes flying continuous missions, a quiet submarine can disappear for long periods. The Borei was built specifically to be hard to detect. With acoustic stealth as its primary design goal, it can hide under thermal layers, blend into background noise from shipping, and move into areas where American sensors are sparse. Even if American forces manage to locate the submarine, what then? Any attempt to attack it would be an extremely risky move, because this is a Russian submarine with Russian personnel still on board, including Russian officers who hold the nuclear launch keys. Striking it with depth charges, torpedoes, or anti-submarine missiles could be seen by Moscow as a direct attack on Russia itself, not on an Iranian asset. That raises the very real danger of a much wider conflict, possibly even involving nuclear powers, a scenario that no one. Chapter 5. Global implications in Washington wants to contemplate. This leaves the United States in a difficult position. Its traditional military strengths, rapid power projection, 20 minutes, 14 seconds, advanced aircraft, carrier strike groups, and precision bombing are not as effective in this kind of scenario. You cannot easily bomb a submarine hiding deep underwater the way you can strike a land-based missile silo or an air defense battery. Senior Pentagon planners are privately admitting that the usual playbook is not working well here. The combination of a stealthy submarine platform, a fast-launch solid-fuel missile, and the short 8 to 12-minute warning time creates a challenge that America's current defenses were not fully designed to handle in this integrated way. This situation is forcing the United States to confront an uncomfortable reality. Even with the world's most powerful military, there are now clear limits to what it can guarantee, especially when facing a determined Russia-Iran partnership armed with top-tier strategic weapons. For decades, American policy in the Middle East has rested on two main promises: maintaining Israel's qualitative military edge and providing Washington's ironclad security guarantee to its allies. Right now, both of those promises are being severely tested, and the outcome is far from certain. Beyond the technology and the submarines and the missile trajectories, there is something else that makes this situation especially dangerous: the iron will and strategic determination of the Iran-Russia partnership. Both countries have paid a very heavy price for their defiance of American-led international order. Iran has lived under some of the harshest economic sanctions in modern history for more than 4 decades. Sanctions that have cost its economy hundreds of billions of dollars and made everyday life a constant struggle. The Iranian people have endured the assassination of their nuclear scientists, cyber attacks on their infrastructure, the killing of a top general by an American drone strike, and constant military threats from a vastly more powerful enemy. Yet the Iranian regime never backed down. Instead, it used that pressure to build its own indigenous missile program, to develop asymmetric capabilities like drones and naval mines, and to strengthen the resolve of its military and political leadership. Russia, on the other hand, has faced sweeping Western sanctions since the war in Ukraine began in 2022. It has lost access to major financial markets, advanced microchips, European energy customers, and global payment systems. Hundreds of Western companies have left Russia. Its economy has been reconfigured for a long-term confrontation with the West. Still, Russia continues to push forward, investing in new weapon systems, deepening alliances with China, Iran, and North Korea, and accepting enormous casualties on the battlefield. What binds these two nations together is a shared belief that they will no longer accept a world where the United States sets all the rules, where American naval power patrols every ocean with impunity, and where American sanctions can any country that steps out of line. They see America's unipolar moment as something that must be challenged, balanced, and eventually replaced with a more multipolar arrangement. This creates a dangerous difference in willpower. For many years, Israeli and American strategy has relied on technological superiority and the near certainty that Washington would always back Israel with overwhelming force if necessary. That confidence has been a cornerstone of Israeli security for decades, allowing Israeli leaders to take risks in peace negotiations and to respond forcefully to threats without fear of abandonment. But now, facing an adversary that is willing to endure great pain and take big risks, that confidence is being shaken. Iran and Russia have shown they are prepared to absorb heavy costs, sanctions, isolation, international condemnation, and the threat of direct war in order to change the balance of power in their favor. They believe the long-term reward, a Middle East where American influence is constrained and where Iran is recognized as a regional superpower, is worth the short-term suffering. In contrast, the United States and Israel are discovering that their traditional advantages, money, technology, and formal alliances may not be enough when facing opponents who are more determined and less afraid of escalation. This is not just about weapons anymore. It is about who has the stronger will to see their strategy through, who is willing to accept more pain and more risk to achieve their objectives. And right now, the Iran-Russia axis is showing a level of strategic patience and resolve that is forcing America and Israel to rethink many long-held assumptions about deterrence, about escalation, and about the very nature of power in the 21st century. Right now, the clock is ticking. We are inside the 24-hour window that Iran has given Tel Aviv. This is not a distant threat or a thought experiment. In this scenario, this is happening in real time, and the next 24 hours could decide whether this crisis stays contained or spirals into something far more dangerous, a regional war, or even a confrontation between nuclear powers. So, what could actually happen in the next day? First, Israel faces an incredibly difficult choice with no good answers. Do they begin a large-scale evacuation of key government offices, military headquarters, intelligence facilities, and strategic sites in Tel Aviv and the surrounding area? Airports begin to fill with panicked civilians, sync to video time.